In this video, we're headed to Daytona Beach, Florida to the Motorsports Hall of Fame of America. Now, this is an automotive racing museum that's on the property of Daytona International Speedway, and it's open year-round. This is something you can check out any time of the year. We happened to be on fall break when we did it, but it's a great place, and they have rotating exhibits, so it's not always the exact same cars in the exact same places, and I wanted to show you some of the cool stuff here. Obviously, a lot of it has direct ties to Daytona and the immense history in this area, but there's also some general racing stuff here too. So we're going to cover it all right here. Let's get into it. So right here, right out of the gate, we got two Top Fuel dragsters. The one on the right is Don Garlett's Swamp Rat number 23. Now, this is in a long line of Top Fuel dragsters that Don Garlett's raced all across the country. This one happens to have been raced in the mid-1970s. And of course, all of Don Garlett's cars are restored beautifully, or preserved in some cases. And this one is a great example. You'll see it's still got a magnesium rear end, it's got a magnesium blower, a Crowder fuel injection system. You can see that hat has had a little bit of damage there. I'm not sure the story behind that. And this is actually an Ed Donovan all aluminum Hemi engine. And look at the cockpit here. We got gold anodized tin work. A lot of great tin work on this car. The body is beautiful. The paint is still in great shape. And you can see this car has got a killer 70s profile, that long nose, laid back roll bar, short wing, and of course those motorcycle style spoke front wheels and a wide front axle. All of those items went away in the 80s and 90s. This is a great piece of 70s drag racing history. By the way, this car ran a low ET of a 577 in the quarter mile at 247.25 miles per hour, and it won the IHRA World Championship in 1976 and a big time match race in 1977 where Garlett's beat Shirley Muldowney in the CBS Challenge of the Sexes at Orange County International Raceway. Speaking of Shirley Muldowney, that's actually the other car that's lined up in the entryway of the museum. Now, this is a much more modern car. This is probably more of a 90s type combination, but still very modern compared to that 70s car from Don Garlett's. You can see this car has two fuel pumps, it has two magnetos, very serious combination here. Big tall wing, modern bodywork with the front spoiler, narrow front axles, solid front wheels. You know, this is much more of what we see today. Even though today's cars have even more advancements, this is a far cry from that 1970s car that we looked at earlier. As we get into the museum, there's a lot of great Daytona history because this place, before the racetrack was built, was known for its races on the beach. So NASCAR races were held on the beach course, which was actually half beach and half on the street. But before oval racing on the beach was a thing, there was a lot of land speed record attempts happening at Ormond Beach and Daytona Beach. During these early days, there were 80 official recognized speed records on the beaches of Ormond Beach and Daytona. And this started in 1903. There was some very serious competition going on in 1903 and beyond, trying to be the fastest car in the world. Going back to 1903, the first recognized record was 68 miles per hour by Alexander Winton. Then the next year, the speed increased dramatically to 92 miles per hour. Then 1910, Barney Oldfield ran 131 miles an hour, and we saw this go up every single year. And by 1935, we're talking about 3 decades difference from breaking the 100 mile an hour barrier. Now we're talking 276 miles per hour, broken by Sir Malcolm Campbell in a car that we'll talk about shortly. The earliest car in the museum is Henry Ford's 999. Now, I'm calling this Henry Ford's because this is actually before Ford Motor Company really got started. So in 1902, this car was built in combination with a bicycle racer, Tom Cooper. They built this thing and named it 999 after the Empire State Express locomotive, which was the first vehicle ever to break the 100 mile an hour mark. So this thing is bare bones. You'll see that there's not much to it, no body work whatsoever, and the engine in this thing comes in at 1,155 cubic inches, and it's a 4-cylinder. This is a crazy combination. It made 80 horsepower, but that was enough to win races, and a twin of this car actually set a record that didn't stand for very long, but it was 91.37 miles per hour. This thing is absolutely crazy, especially when you look at the seating arrangement and the fact that it doesn't have a conventional steering wheel. So I loved seeing this huge picture. This is an aerial shot from back in the day of the beach racetrack. So you can see the cars lined up on the beach making the turn. This is the north turn, which would turn right out on to A1A. So obviously they would close the road to have these races, and you can see thousands of pedestrian cars, just regular cars parked all over the place, and many of them lined up on the beach to watch. Just amazing to see what it was like back then. This is a cool lineup of tires. It really shows the evolution of racing tires, starting out with really skinny, really tall tires going up to the wider, shorter sidewalls that we see today. And obviously throughout this museum there's lots of historical pictures, newspaper clippings, lots of documentation, lots of great memorabilia, so much cool stuff to see, lots of great stuff that's been donated to the museum or on loan from different collections. So many things that you can just sit here and read and really get an understanding of how special the Daytona area is to racing. Had it not been for the beach races and the time trials and all the land speed records that came out of this area, this would just be another beach. It wouldn't be special as far as the racing world is concerned, but now it is one of the biggest racing cities in the world. Everybody knows about Daytona, and it's because of these early days. The museum also had a special motorcycle racing exhibit, which is an important part of Daytona's racing history as well, because every March there's an event called Bike Week, and during that week there's a ton of racing action that happens. So it's not just a bunch of hanging out and partying. There's a lot of serious racing going on. There's a motocross race, there's flat track races, there's races on a road course, all sorts of racing activities going on. So it was cool they had a motorcycle exhibit, and of course I loved this Daytona Special, which has two Harley-Davidson flathead engines. You can see that custom frame that's been stretched out. It's got some low-cut handlebars, some really cool looking polished aluminum gas tanks. I mean, I'm not sure of the history of this thing or if it's something somebody has built recently, but it is super cool. No front brake, real simple, real clean, and of course, orange looks good on any Harley-Davidson like this. Also in the motorcycle exhibit was a really cool drag bike. This one belonged to Vicky Farr, and she is recognized as the first professional female motorcycle drag racer. She's raced a lot of different types of bikes, and the one we're looking at here is a Kawasaki KZ1000 Z1R. These things made big time horsepower and they were revolutionary, even the street version, but this one obviously has been worked over significantly. You can see it has a stretched swing arm, no rear suspension, wheelie bars on the back, a cool little aerodynamic fairing, low cut bars. This is the quintessential drag bike of the 70s and 80s. Another cool detail in the museum are the engines that are on display. So the one on the right is a 1952 Hudson Hornet, and this is a cast iron, heavy, flathead 6-cylinder engine, 308 cubic inches, 2 carburetors, but this thing won big races in NASCAR. And then next to it is a Ford engine from 1964. These things came in at 255 cubic inches and made 495 horsepower at 8,400 RPMs. They ran on methanol. They made beautiful noises. These things won a bunch of races, including several Indy 500 races from the 60s and to the early 70s. Now, I was not expecting to see this in this museum. This is a special treat. I got to see this thing up close and personal. This is a very rare opportunity to see this car and to basically be right here with land speed racing history. This is the Mickey Thompson Challenger 1. You can see it right there, clear as day. 4 blown and injected Pontiac engines. This thing is unbelievable. This car is on loan from Danny Thompson, Mickey Thompson's son, and this thing is so cool. This thing went 406.60 miles per hour on the Bonneville Salt Flats in 1960. One of the reasons this car is so cool to me is obviously the Mickey Thompson tie-in. Mickey Thompson was the California car guy. He was a hot rodder, he was a drag racer, he was a land speed racer, he owned companies, he had it going on. And in 1960, he hadn't really developed all of these different things yet. He was still just trying to go fast. And in this case, he did. In 1960, at the Bonneville Salt Flats, he went 406.60 miles per hour in this car, the Challenger 1. Unfortunately, he had an issue with the car, so he couldn't make a return run, which means that his record was not official. Regardless of that, this is an iconic car. The fact that it has 4 blown and injected engines and that a single lever changes the gear in all 4 transmissions, a single pedal activates all 4 clutches. I mean, this thing has some crazy engineering, and you had to have some serious guts to get behind the wheel of this thing and to be locked into that capsule. The paint on it, the magnesium wheels, the magnesium blowers, the 4-port fuel injection setups, the header pipes that are flush with the bodywork. You can tell I'm excited about this car. This was a special moment to be able to be up close and personal with what I believe to be one of the most iconic cars in all of racing history. Here are 2 more extremely cool engines. Now these are both Buick V6 engines that were run in Indy cars. These things were really exotic too. So these things had aluminum cylinder heads. You can see they have a Kinsler intake manifold with port fuel injection, and then of course turbochargers. Both of these engines have a big single turbocharger. One of them has an air-to-air intercooler, one of them does not. I'm not sure of the other differences, but these things are really cool and they made big power in the 80s. Now here's a really interesting car. This is called the Delta Wing. You can see it's proportionally strange because it has a very narrow front track and a normal wide rear track. But this thing has all sorts of aerodynamic tricks, and obviously the whole idea with doing that really narrow front track is to cut through the air. So aerodynamically this thing has some advantages. I'm not sure they ever got the handling really dialed in on this thing to where it was out there just dominating, but it's a really cool concept, and it'll stand for years and years and years as a very wild race car idea that became reality. While we were walking around, Carly and Isaac had a special opportunity to sit in Martin Truex Jr.'s NASCAR Cup car. Now this thing has obviously been modified as a display car. You can see it's got a door cut in it. The door bars have been cut away so that people can get in and out of it, take pictures, smile, and have a good time. So it was a really neat opportunity and very cool. The kids got a kick out of it. Now this back area of the shop was roped off, so we couldn't go any further than where I'm standing right now. But I had my eyes on this really cool Mercury Cougar drag car. Now this thing is the CarCraft magazine Super Cat. This was a legitimate magazine car back in the day, and this thing has been restored beautifully. You can see the markings on the windshield. This car ran in Super Stock F. It had a 428 cubic inch engine in it. These things made big time horsepower, and they were really fast in these Mercury Cougars. So the really special part about this car is the Coca-Cola sponsorship. In fact, this was actually a sweepstakes that you could win this car. This car was engineered and built by Dyno Don Nicholson, and they say it was valued at over $7,000, which was a lot back in 1969. But this thing could be won through a Coca-Cola sweepstakes. So this was a really neat piece, and this car is restored absolutely to the T. Krager wheels, Goodyear polyglass on the front, some slicks on the back, slapper bars. It's got all the right stuff, the cool paint, the cool lettering, the cool decals. It has it all. And I hate that I didn't get to see this thing a little bit closer and make a few laps around it, but I'm glad I at least got a glimpse of it. And I'll show you a few additional pictures here of when this thing was out in the open, so that someday, if you're at the museum, maybe you'll get a chance to see it. Another cool exhibit is the Daytona International Speedway Victory Lane. And in this exhibit, you'll see this year's winner of the Daytona 500. So in this case, the 2025 winner of the Daytona 500 was William Byron in the 24 car. And we see it right here, the car just as it was raced. This is really cool. Also on display is the Harley J. Earl Daytona 500 trophy. Now this gets a new name added to it each year, and a replica of this trophy gets given to the winner of the Daytona 500 each year, but the real thing is shown here in the museum year-round. Next up, we got a sprint car, and this is not just any sprint car. This is Tony Stewart's Office Depot sponsored sprint car. You can see this thing is killer. Small block Chevy based engine in these cars, and they are rowdy. Big old tires on the back, little ones on the front, crazy wing with all sorts of downforce. These cars look cool and they are exciting to watch. Alright, now here's a wild one, and I admit I know nothing about vintage racing boats, especially hydroplanes. These things were pretty exotic back in the day, but they had some really historic horsepower. So this is a 1982 based boat, and it has a World War II era Rolls Merlin V12 engine in it. These things made big time horsepower even back in the 30s and 40s, but once these guys tweaked on them, they were making 2,800 horsepower with these engines. This boat had a top speed of 195 miles an hour. It's a spectacular piece. It's beautifully restored, and it's a really cool thing to look at. So if you're a fan of motorsports of the 1960s and 70s, you know the name Linda Vaughn, and you know her connection with Hurst Shifters. She was absolutely a household name, and she drove a brand new Oldsmobile every year. Oldsmobile had a deal with her, and this was one of her cars. This is a 79 Hurst Olds, and it's restored beautifully. It is legitimately Linda Vaughn's car. It was bought and restored by an Olds collector, Bruce Smith, and it was donated to the museum a few years ago. This is a really cool piece. It's not exactly the prime time of muscle cars, but it's still extremely cool. Now there's lots of great cars and lots of iconic cars in this museum, but if I had to pick one that was the most iconic and the most influential and the most connected to Daytona Beach, it would be this one. This is a staple of this museum, and it is the Bluebird. This is a specially constructed land speed car, and this car was an absolute monster. This thing was built around a supercharged Rolls-Royce V12 engine, 2,240 cubic inches. This thing made 2,300 horsepower, and this car ran over 300 miles an hour in the 1930s. This car set a record on Daytona Beach where it ran 276.82 miles an hour in a 1-mile run. Later that year, he went to Bonneville where he had a longer stretch, and it exceeded 300 miles per hour in 1935. It was the first vehicle to ever go over 300 miles an hour on wheels. So a really interesting part of this car are the tires. It actually has 6 wheels, 6 tires, 2 in the front, 4 in the back. The tires measure 37 inches tall. They feature 18 plies of silk and cotton cord that are underneath a paper-thin rubber coating. These things had a 7-minute lifetime at speed. So when this thing would make its record runs, it was required to make a return run backwards on the course. So between those runs, they were allowed a few minutes for the engine to cool down and to just generally check things out. But in the case of this car, it required that they change the tires. So they developed a jack system to be able to jack this car up, change those tires, which were custom made and cost $1,500 a piece in 1935. They had to change those tires in a very quick manner and get this thing ready for its return run, and they did it. Along with this car being on display, you'll see 2 tires that are absolutely shredded, and these are originals from that day in 1935, and the original screw jacks that allowed this car to be lifted on the sand and those tires to be changed out in such a quick manner. And just all out guts to get behind the wheel of this thing. It weighed 10,000 plus pounds, and it went over 300 miles an hour. It's so crazy to think that this was almost 100 years ago that all this was taking place. There are all sorts of cool race cars, bikes, and even boats hanging from the rafters of this place. And then check out this cool display with the actual banking of the Daytona International Speedway, giving you an idea of just how steep this racetrack is. And on that banking, you've got several really cool race cars. With one in particular that I want to talk a little bit more about, this is another one of those cars similar to the Mickey Thompson Challenger, similar to the Bluebird. This is an absolute treasure, and I feel really privileged to be able to see this thing up close and personal. This is the Mad Dog 4, a crazy combination of parts and pieces that was built for one purpose only. It was built to break the 180 mile an hour average speed at Daytona International Speedway. Now, Bill France had put up a $10,000 bounty for the first car to break that record, and his whole idea was to beat out Italy's Monza racetrack, which was touted as the world's fastest racetrack at 177 miles per hour. So this 180 mile an hour barrier had $10,000 up for grabs for the first car. Bob Osecki built a car to do it. He put together a supercharged Chrysler engine. This is what you'd see in a dragster of the time, and he put it into an Indy Roadster chassis and body. It has a pair of airplane wings on it. These are legitimately airplane wings that have been turned upside down to create downforce instead of lift. And this thing did the job. In 1961, Art Malone, a dragster driver connected with Don Garlits, drove this car to an average speed of 181.56 miles per hour, winning the $10,000 in a car that looks like something out of a 1950s comic book. Another cool car is the Budweiser King Funny car from Kenny Bernstein. This was during the time that he was sponsored by Buick, Mac Tools, Quaker State, Budweiser. I mean, he was doing it big time in the late 80s. And this is a great example of that generation of car. You've got weld drag light wheels, you've got a real aerodynamic body, you've got a magnesium bird catcher up there. A lot of great pieces on this car that really tie into that late 80s and early 90s era. Now, it wouldn't be Daytona without some Dale Earnhardt action, and this is a replica of the 1999 Cup car. So obviously black, Goodwrench sponsor, number 3. I mean, it has all the right stuff. This is the era for Dale Earnhardt. Now, here's a cool race car from the early 30s. This is a 1931 based Simplex Piston Ring Special. Now, this is a home-built car. A lot of these old race cars were just built out of everything they could get their hands on. And in this case, it has narrowed 1927 Essex frame rails, and it has a 1928 Chevrolet 4-cylinder engine. So this thing is 171 cubic inches, has twin Winfield carburetors on a very rare manifold, and it had a hand-pumped fuel system. So the driver would pump the fuel by hand. So this was a whole different era of racing than what we're used to today. And this is a great example, and it even says on the signboard that this is possibly the best surviving 30s beach racer in existence. Up next, we got another vintage racing boat, this time a 1966 Viking Spirit. You can see this thing is low slung, it's got a cool paint job on it, and of course out back here we've got a 427 based big block Chevy. Tunnel ram, 2 4s, big old headers, and I love the custom header covers and velocity stack covers. Really neat details on this vintage boat. Up next is an Indy car, this time from 1971, and you can see this car has a killer look to it. The really low slung body with beautiful paint work, and you can see the magnesium wheels have aged very nicely. It's got original Firestone Indy tires on it. As we get to the back, we see that turbocharged Ford V8 with a lot of exotic parts. And even though this thing was a really cool engineering piece, it didn't win any races, but it did get to visit the White House. As you can see in this picture, Andy Granatelli got to pose with President Richard Nixon, which was a pretty big honor. Next up, we've got a really cool Corvette. This is a 1969 Corvette race car, and the really special part about this is it was a Copo car. So that means it was a specially ordered car, and it's powered by the famous L88 427. These things were rated at 430 horsepower, but everybody knows they made more than that and had a lot of potential to make well over 500 horsepower. So this one's got a really cool looking vintage paint job. This thing is slick. It's got big old tires on it, big side pipes, cool mini light style wheels. This thing has the right look. Of course, the L88 scoop up front bumper's been taken off. And this thing's got the perfect late 60s, early 70s race car look. Throughout the museum, you see a huge variety of cars. You've got modern cars, you got vintage cars, you got some of these that are kind of in the middle. This road race car is a 2002 model. And then, of course, we've got a classic 1990s NASCAR. This is Rusty Wallace's number 2 Miller Genuine Draft sponsored NASCAR Ford Thunderbird. And this thing was famous because he won some big races in it, and he had some big wrecks in this black number 2 car. And I thought this was pretty cool. This is a door skin off of a 1970 Ford Torino, which was driven by Donnie Allison back in the day in NASCAR. But what I like the most are the aluminum block-off plates for the door handle and the door lock cylinder. That's just cool old race car stuff. Up next is a great representation of the early days of NASCAR. So in the early 1950s, these Hudson Hornets were extremely popular. They made big horsepower for the time in what we would now look at as a very antiquated design, a flathead six-cylinder engine. But they were big cubic inches, they made lots of power in all the right places, and the chassis on these cars ended up being pretty great for racing. So these cars have a great legacy in NASCAR racing, and that was made even more popular thanks to Doc Hudson in the movie Cars. Here we got a really cool off-road truck. This one's a Ford Bronco, and it's built by Bill Strop. Now this thing is really cool, it's very nicely restored, but this is a pretty significant truck. This thing won the 1969 Baja 1000 and continued to win many other races in the 1970s. And it's in perfect condition. I love the looks of it. It's got the aluminum slotted mags on there and a great color combination with cool lettering. Now this is a super cool 1980s road race car. This is one of only two Datsun 280ZX turbo cars built by Bob Sharp Racing, which was a factory-backed racing team. This thing is in beautiful condition, and this is the exact car that Paul Newman drove to his first Trans Am victory at Brainerd International Raceway, where he led every single lap and set a new record for average race speed. Of course, a Daytona Racing Museum wouldn't be complete without a Richard Petty piece, and right here we're looking at the 1972 Dodge Charger. Now this was a pretty significant car because it had a 426 cubic inch Hemi, which was not out of the ordinary at the time, but what was out of the ordinary was the STP paint job that we're seeing here. Now Petty blue was pretty normal, but seeing this red on the side of the 43 car was a change, and this was the first year that Petty went from a Plymouth to a Dodge. Much like the muscle car world, the NASCAR world was changing a lot, and cars like this sort of marked the end of an era with the big 426 engines. Sitting next to it is a Callaway LM Corvette, and this is number 001, the very first one. You can see this is a C4 based car with custom aerodynamic bodywork, really cool looking piece. And then finishing out this row is an absolutely beautiful Indy car. This is a Penske Chevrolet car that was sponsored by Fitzgerald Glider Kits and driven by Joseph Newgarden.